France up against the Wallabies this weekend, folks. Neither of these sides you feel like in November has quite hit 100%. France obviously lost to the Springboks, improved their performance levels against Fiji, although that game in itself they were up and down. 3-0 up, and then it was 21-all as the Fijians scored 3 unanswered tries before France proved to be too good at the end of the match. Australia have been in games and then seemingly kind of losing them more at the end. So 3 losses on the bounce. I mean, they did have a win over Japan a while back, but England, Italy, and then Ireland last week have not gone the Wallabies' way. We'll go through this one, the squads that have been named, some of the changes, prediction stats. You guys can let us know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We're less than 200 people to 100,000. Wouldn't that be nice? For the French, they've kept things remarkably stable. We've got some big props on display this week, like Gros, Marchand, and Montagne are the same 3 front rowers they sent out against Fiji. The big French tight head's like 130-something kilos. The Aussie tight head's bigger, but we've got some big boppers on display. And then Flament and Meafou is a changed second row for the French. Meafou behind Montagne is a whole bunch of beef at scrum time. So they will be looking to turn the screws on the Aussie scrum. Jelonch, Ollivon, and Alldritt are the back row. So Ollivon switches to, I guess, more familiar back row. I don't watch the top 14 enough to know, but when I see Ollivon play, it's usually as a flanker. He did start the game in the locks last week, moved to the flank, and was pretty outstanding. Managed to get man of the match in that game, but it is Alldritt who is captain for this one at number 8. He was really, really busy in terms of his carries and go forward and, getting through those run meters, which is what you want from Grégory Alldritt as a loose forward, whereas Ollivon, despite the fact that he scored a try, was more of a kind of tackle machine man. The back line is Lucu and Ntamack. There seems to be a little bit of pressure building on Ntamack for not finding the form that we've seen of him in old. He's had a couple of quiet weeks, so we'd like to have a big game against the Wallabies. And then the midfield, hopefully they can keep both midfielders on the field this time, France, because they lost 2 of their midfielders last week, which meant it was a little bit rejigged. Fickou is back in, and Deporteerre continues on at 13. Bielle-Biarrey and Penaud are the wings, and Ramos is there at fullback. It'd be nice to see Bielle-Biarrey recapture some of that Six Nations form, to be honest, because he was almost unplayable at times, but he likewise has been kept a little bit more quiet. Well, he did set up Ollivon for a try last week, kind of unselfishly. Ramos, you feel like, was into a bit of everything. A lot of touches, a lot of passes, a lot of runs, a lot of kicks. So maybe more involvements than Ntamack, to be fair. Bench-wise, Lamothe, Neti, and Laclayat, that's no changes there. Taufifenua does drop to the bench. They do have another big body to bring off. Aradu is there as well, so 2 big locks on the bench. Jagu, who I think spent a bit of midfield time last week, but is a loose forward, is there in the 21 jumper. So just the 2 specialist backs and halfback Jeannot. It seems like Ligarek is still injured, and then Gourguet is going to get a debut from the bench in the midfield, potentially. We'll see how he goes, so congratulations to him. For the Australians, they have made a few changes, and it's another new 10. I don't say new, but Carter Gordon's back at 10. How many guys have they played at 10? They've played Lolosio at 10. They've played Liner. They've played Carter Gordon. They've played James O'Connor. They've played Tainee. But they've had 5 10s this year. And another guy's been in the mix, Ben Donaldson. So it seems to be kind of hard for the Aussies to build any consistency with all the changes at 10. But essentially they said James O'Connor went back to do some home life stuff. He's only just moved up to the Northern Hemisphere to join his new club, Leicester. So they didn't want to keep him in the squad as kind of the extra. They've already got Tainee, they've already got Carter Gordon, so Joe said having him there would just be a luxury. So they sent him. He's out of the squad. Carter Gordon is back. Still not training 100%, which is a little bit concerning, but Joe seems to be pretty happy with the progress that he's making in terms of his recovery. Gus Bell, Billy Pollard, and Taniela Tupou is a bit of a change front row. Tupou's back in. He's a big unit, so like I said, both sides have got big tight head props. Pollard starts, and Gus Bell keeps his spot. Williams and Frost are the locks. Frost being there will hopefully secure a bit more line-out ball, because the line-out ball last week was pretty erratic. Tom Hooper switches to loose forward instead of lock this week. McCright at 7. Maybe had his quietest game for the Wallabies in terms of his... Like, he was still on the tackle a lot, but he conceded more penalties than 1 turnovers for a change, which is kind of, his winning turnovers has been his specialty. And then Harry Wilson is there at 8. You still feel like he needs to get more go-forward board as well. Like him and Valetini. Valetini's dropped to the bench. I've been monitoring their numbers recently, and they are, a metre or 2 per carry, which is just lacking a bit of punch. Gordon and Gordon. It's the double Gordon 9-10 combo. So Carter and Jake. Yeah, like I said, the constant changes at 9 and 10 have not helped. Some of that's injury, some of that's retirements. But yeah, there's just not been week-on-week consistency in the 9-10 combo. Ikitau and Suoli is one of those areas where you do see the kind of cohesion. Like, these guys know each other pretty well, having played a lot of games together. Ikitau, again, continued to improve. Last week, got himself a try. You feel like they could probably use Suoli a bit more, especially if they want to try some aerial game stuff against France. Dylan Peach is back on the left wing, Potter on the right, and Jorgensen's there at fullback. Jorgensen got founded a little bit in terms of his positioning last week, so would like to be better this week. Fassler, Ross, and Ala Alatoa, your bench replacements. So Ross is into the squad. The other 2 guys drop to the bench. Valetini, like I said, drops to the bench. So no specialist lock on the bench, but they do have Tom Hooper, who can cover if needs be. Tizano, the other Lucy, and then 3 backs in Kalani Thomas, Tainir Bed, and Felipe Dalgunu. So Kalani Thomas will potentially get his debut if he comes on. They said in the press basically that he's been with the squad for 5 weeks, and they made a decision, along with Ryan Lonergan, to give him a game, because otherwise he's just trained with the squad for 5 weeks and not got a game. So that's a little bit of a sentimental one, I suppose. But yeah, he's a sharp player. Hopefully he can run the ball at some tired bodies from an Australian perspective. Some stats for the week. The French did get a lot more go-forward ball against Fiji than they did against South Africa. But they should do, because Fiji's not quite as highly ranked as South Africa, even if the Fijians, for most of the game, had 15 guys on the field instead of 14. But I feel like one area that they will like to be better, apart from individuals, just the discipline. Both games have been above 10 penalties conceded, which they would like to keep lower, and both games have had yellow cards. So from a French perspective, I feel like they'll be looking for that to improve. And then, like, individually, like I said, just getting Ntamack into some space, Bielle-Biarrey to get his kick and chase going. I feel like they would like to see that happen. For Australia, their attacking numbers, unfortunately, against Ireland were as similarly bad as against Italy, England, and Japan. They're just not getting the punch that they want. But at least, like, of all guys, like, Tom Hooper, he was the guy getting the most punch on the carry from the Aussie forwards. So, yeah, get the positioning right at the back. And get the line-out right. The line-out last week was genuinely just not good enough from an Australian perspective. Recent history between the sides. It's 3-2 in France's favour. The last 2 games being played in France in 2023 and 2022. And then there was that French tour of Australia back in 2021 where the Aussies won it 2-1. Remember it being July. There were a lot of big gun players missing from that French side. But the average score is 30-26. In France's favour, which is actually fairly close. It's not predicted to be as close this time. The rugby forecast algorithm is saying France by 7, and the bookies are going a step further, saying the French by 15 points. Just FYI, for the Rugby World Rankings, which will be crucial in terms of the Rugby World Cup draw, which is being held next month, there is a chance for the Wallabies to dump the French out of the top 6, which would be the top seeds, and get there themselves, but only if they win by 16 points or more. So not only do the Wallabies have to win, they need to do it by 16 plus, which, given they're predicted to get beaten by between 7 and 15, seems like a tough ask. They asked Joe about it, and I don't speak French, but he said something along the lines of très difficile, or something like that, which makes me think he thinks it's going to be difficult. Good on him for speaking some French in the pre-match interview, though. Good on you, Joe. It is on the Stade de France. It's a late kickoff, which is normal kickoff for you guys in France, which is 9:10. Good timing for you guys in Australia. I think on the East Coast anyway, it'll be like 7:10. For me here in New Zealand, it's like a 9 o'clock in the morning kickoff, so very nice. Rugby and breakfast. Luke Pearce, the Englishman, is the ref. We'll see how he goes. Subscribe to the channel, folks, if you haven't done so already. Would love to hit 100k. Maybe this weekend. We're less than 200 people there, so that'd be cracking. Take care, folks. Enjoy the matches this weekend, and I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.